A very good evening to everyone who is present here with us for this live masterclass, the 6th masterclass of the very prestigious one-year global MBA in Business Analytics offered by Jindal Global Business School, a one-year full-time degree in Business Analytics. Well, today's one exciting session that I was looking forward to while moderating. And this is one session where the participants would actually learn why there are certain technical subjects like ERP, which are important. Why are organizations adopting ERP? And why at all do we need ERP in our businesses? Gone are the days when we used to think that ERP is meant only and only for bigger businesses, larger houses. But today, even a small medium enterprise can actually conquer the market with the utilization of ERP. In this 6th masterclass, I'm proud and privileged to introduce Mr. Abhijit Ray, who consented to speak on organizational growth and transformation with ERP. I'll very quickly take a moment to introduce our guest today. Mr. Abhijit has 22 plus years of experience in IT. He's currently heading the enterprise application division within OSI Digital that works on Oracle eBusiness Suite, Oracle Fusion, PeopleSoft, NetSuite, Salesforce projects, etc. Well, participants, let me not miss out on my very first conversation that I had with Mr. Ray. So while we were discussing about what is one thing that we must definitely tell our participants, Mr. Ray very quickly said that, Meenakshi, if it's about business analytics, let me talk about ERP, because he himself has seen these systems evolving. He has been a witness to many success stories of organizations globally. Not only that, while I was just having a discussion about what kind of content are we expecting our students and participants to learn from through the session, believe me, I was just so impressed for one very simple reason, that there are many other institutions in the country offering a similar course. But what makes us even think about career in business analytics and how ERP is going to play a very vital role up there is something that Mr. Ray is going to tell all the young minds who are viewing us on YouTube Live. On that note, I now pass on the virtual dais to Mr. Ray, who will take it forward from here. Over to you, Mr. Ray.
Thank you, Dr. Toma. Thank you. And a warm welcome and very good evening to all of the participants. Dr. Toma has given an extensive introduction of myself, so I don't think there's anything else I need to tell you, but I'll just add one sentence just so you know. I've been dealing with ERP for more than 18 years now. And I have had the privilege and the opportunity to see it evolve over a span of 2 decades. But ERP today, it's a must in all companies. And let me tell you how and why. So I'm going to take you through some slides which I have prepared. If you could give me a moment. I have to share my screen. Sorry, just give me one moment. I'll be disconnected for a moment. I'll join you back. This is the computer's.
I request the IT team to please give the co-host rights to Mr. Ray again as soon as he joins, because Mr. Ray is supposed to share his screen. Meanwhile, I would also request the viewers to just think about what kind of questions would you have for Mr. Ray, especially when it comes to ERP. I mean, quite heard of a nomenclature which we are used to, but how and why should business analytic aspirant should actually be thinking about ERP as one of the disciplines that you will undergo in case if you pick up a course in business analytics? Why should it be expected at all for a business analytics aspirant to even learn about? Mr. Vikas, thank you so much for giving the co-host rights to Mr. Ray.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry for the interruption. I hope I can share my screen now. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, so today's topic is about organizational growth and transformation with ERP. And I have got a few questions to begin with. So first of all, let me say this is a wonderful initiative. I have been hiring professionals on ERP for years now, and especially from colleges. And I can tell you that for anyone coming out fresh from college, finds it a little difficult to first get the concept of ERP. It takes a while, but I think this is a wonderful initiative so that those who are in college today, they get an idea about what ERP is. So today, let me take that opportunity and take you through it. Today, this is our agenda. We'll start with the business case. We'll talk about ERP, how organization benefits from ERP implementation, how ERP is adopted or implemented, and then transitioning business to ERP. Then we get into business analytics, how it plays a part, and we'll talk about roles and hiring on BA and ERP. BA in this case is business analytics. Okay, and if you have any questions at any point, feel free to stop me if you have a question. Okay, I'll be more than happy to take your question there. So let's start with the simple business case. Let's take a hypothetical company. Let's say we have Ram, a very common name in our country. He decides to spin a new company called Chatpata Chips. Now, Chatpata Chips is going to be manufactured, sold by his company to his customers. So he starts by recruiting some people, and these people have to work somewhere. So he takes up an office, which is also functioning as his whole and soul unit in the city of New Delhi. This office does these functions. First, manufacture the chips. Two, it serves as a warehouse, which stores his finished products. Then he has a marketing team, or let's say this is a small business to begin with. He has a couple of people who handles marketing. Then he has, let's say, a couple of people in sales, because someone has to sell. Someone has to work as a salesman. And finally, he's got a finance team. These are the absolute basics. We're just touching upon the idea of a small business, how it can run, so that we can visualize how it works. Now, once he starts running this business keeps on moving, and he makes money from there. Okay, very simple. Now, let's move on. Now the business is running. Let's see a simple business scenario. Simple flow. So what happens, how do we sell? So first we have to go out to the market. We have to run some marketing campaigns so that people know that there is something called Chatpata Chips. So he has his marketing team run some campaigns. Once the campaigns go through, then people get interested and people would like to place some order. Let's say another mom and pop shop is a customer. Let's take the case of some kirana store. Okay, Chatpata Chips seems to be good. Let me put in an order so that I can also sell it from my store. So a customer then would have to request to buy, which is essentially a sales order. This sales order will have to be passed on to the sales team. And the sales team looks up the sales order and they pass it on to the warehouse, which contains the inventory of products. Now, this inventory of products are looked up. Let's say they've asked for 100 units of a particular item. Now, first, how would we sell? We would look up into the warehouse and see whether we've actually got 100 units of it. Let's say we don't happen to have 100 units. Then what would we do, or the person at the warehouse do? He would have to request the manufacturing team to manufacture so many units. So he would have to place a manufacturing order. After that is placed, it is manufactured and the goods are again stored in the warehouse. Once the goods are all in, then the sales team realizes they have enough quantity to meet the order. They pick up all the order and ship the order. Now, there is a reason why I have color coded in this picture, and I'll explain to you in a moment. After the goods are shipped, those go to the customer, and customer gets a GRN. We call it a GRN, which is a goods received note. So the customer has received the goods. Once the customer receives the goods, this GRN goes back to the company, and the finance team then sends an invoice to the customer. Once customer gets the invoice, it is paid. Very high level. I can tell you this has multiple documents in there, not just sales order, manufacturing, and GRN and invoice, but I'm just simplifying the entire process. Even with such a simple process, you can see how lengthy this process is. Right from the point where the marketing campaign starts to the point a sale is completed. Any questions so far?
Not as yet.
Okay, very well. Moving on. Now, if you've got this flow, just put that in your mind. Let's move on and see how we can answer a few questions. Question number one. How does the sales team know whether they've met their targets? Interesting. Okay, let's look at another question. How does the inventory team know how much what they have in stock at any point in time? Okay, let's take another question. How does the marketing team know how many prospects have been converted into customers? Or how does the finance team know that all the invoices have been paid, or if there are any outstanding invoices and which customers have to be contacted for payments? Another question. How are all the payment, purchasing, hiring, and so on? There are various processes which go into running a business. Now, all these need some kind of approvals. Now, how are these approvals handled? And finally, how does Ram, who's the CEO and MD of the company, he has to know what the health of the company is, whether they're running a profit, whether they're at a loss, if they are making good profit, should he expand his warehouse? Is he getting a lot of requests for certain type of goods? Should he hire people in the manufacturing department or in the sales department? He needs to know at the end of the particular cycle, and it all has to be real time. So let me go to the one at the bottom. How do you think all transactions are handled? Looking at this scenario, in general, any small business, and I can tell you, I have interacted with small business and I have always tried to, I've been a proponent and a fan of digitization, frankly speaking. And I have never, ever vouched for any kind of manual work. So whenever I have approached any small business and I've asked them, Why don't you do it this way? So they would say, oh, we are fine. You know how they're handled? I'm sure you've guessed it, Excel sheets. So even if a company is a small, medium-sized company, they have a tendency to send Excel sheets. Okay, I'm asking for a sale. It goes to some Excel sheets. Then that Excel sheet moves to another department, into some other Excel sheet, and so on and so forth. Now, imagine the marketing department's data is with the marketing guys in their Excel. The sales team has their data in their Excel. Inventory is in some other Excel. There are massive amounts of Excels, all in different silos, in different ponds. And none of these are connected with each other. Now, if Ram, sitting on top of the company, he needs data. For instance, how is the financial health of the company? How are these connected to how much of sales we've made or how much of inventory we've brought in? It becomes a gigantic task. And his team will have to put in hours and hours of work just to get him that data. And when they do get that data is already old. It's not real time because you have to put in so much of effort to collate so many Excels. So by the time a few days have gone by, and you've already made some more sales. Or if you're losing money, you've already lost some more money. So that's a big, big risk. Next thing, imagine we just talked about one center, which is New Delhi. If you look at the second last question here, how will all the business processes be tracked when other centers or units are open within the country or globally? Oh my goodness, I can't even imagine how much of effort it'll take to get everything in order. And primarily for this reason, the answer is ERP. ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning. But it is a wholesome package which has been in the market for 2 decades by now. And the reason why that package is needed is primarily the reasons we talked about. This is not everything, but this is just to give you an idea what it does and why it's needed today. Okay. Any questions?
We just have one small question here from a participant
Sure.
who is asking that, are we over here saying that even the e-commerce businesses who just start up through a startup also require ERP at the very nascent stage, or is there a stage where we require ERP?
Excellent question. Excellent question. This is on the dot. This has been a very deliberating question and debated across communities. Now, typically, what we suggest is go for ERP as soon as possible. As soon as possible. Because the more you delay implementing ERP, the more you actually lose. The thing about ERP is that you don't get to see that system upfront. I'll tell you. We have today, there are numerous businesses we deal with as a customer. We never, what do we deal with? We see a portal if we buy something online, or we go to a store, we buy something from there. And how do we pay? We use a credit card or we pay in cash. So we actually interact with the point of sale terminal. But almost every company today has got ERP of some kind, but we never get to see it. Why? Because ERP is actually a back office application. It is actually much more than an application, but well, we call it application. End users never get to see ERP. And that's why it's not flashy. And that's why a lot of companies, especially startups, They think that, okay, no one actually will get to see, yet I have to put in some effort. We'll talk about more on this in the subsequent slides. And so they might think, okay, let's focus on investing in some of the other areas. But I can tell you, I have dealt with some of the startups today, and the quicker it is, the better, because otherwise it will form, it's like a lot of things will accumulate, which will take a longer time and more investment to actually detangle. Let me show you some of the business processes in ERP. So over here, we actually talked of a very simple process. I mean, it's actually a very complicated process, but we actually simplified the entire process. This is just one. Now, I want to give you an idea about how many kinds of processes there are in a business, and hence there are in any ERP package. Now, this is not complete. This is just some of those. As you can see, any business, more or less, will have some of these processes, and we have more. We haven't even touched other areas like HR, projects. We haven't even touched the other areas. And I don't know how big a crowd we have here today. Just a pop quiz. If you've noticed a process that we just talked about, that process belongs to one of these here. Can anyone try to get which process that was? If you'd like to type on chat, or I don't know if they can talk. Anybody?
Not as yet.
Okay, no worries, no worries. I'll tell you. That was the order to cash. The order to cash you see on the top right, third from the top right. That was a very, very simplified process of order to cash. So since I touched upon that, you can see there is a module called order management, then inventory, receivables, because the company is receiving money from the customer, cash management, and general ledger. Any transaction, any financial transaction will automatically go to general ledger, and then hence cash management is also involved here. Okay, moving on. Some of the major ERP packages today in the market. Oracle E-Business Suite, SAP, PeopleSoft, JD Edwards, Barn, Microsoft Dynamics. But the biggest, the ones that dominate today's market are Oracle E-Business Suite and SAP. PeopleSoft is also a very good package, and JD Edwards, but they don't have that level of market share, and they've become acquired by Oracle, I think in 2008 or 9. So they're also a part of Oracle, but they still go by their product names. So today, these two, Oracle Business Suite, we call it EBS, and SAP, these two dominate the market. You'll find almost every company either going for one of the other. But in India, since we got a question about startups, in India, today, we've got Tally ERP, Deskera ERP, and some other ERP packages which are also coming up in the market. These are a lot cheaper than Oracle and SAP. So to answer the previous question, startups, if they do not want to invest a lot, these are cheaper options. So today, one might go for a cheaper ERP, and once they become bigger, they can go for a full-blown ERP. While that's one option, there is another option. I know Oracle gives a SME package for small companies, which is SMB package, sorry, small and medium enterprises or businesses. And I believe SAP does the same. I'm actually an Oracle person out and out, and hence I know about Oracle. So all the examples that I'm going to take are from Oracle. Okay. So this was actually my first question when I started off with. What is ERP and how will it help organizations evolve? So I think I've answered the question what ERP is. Now, how does it help organizations evolve? ERP allows all business processes to be tightly integrated. Now, what do I mean? I mean, if I just go back, just think of the previous slide, moving from the marketing end to the finance end, the entire business cycle, all were different silos, different departments working on their own. They're getting some information, they're moving that. Okay, I've got this input from this department, so I prepare my own data and then I process the data. Then I send some data to the next department and it becomes a kind of a Chinese whisper. Essentially, that's how a business runs, right? There's one input and one output. The problem here is all the input and output are disparate. No one is connected. What ERP does is all that information is tightly integrated. So if, let's say, someone in the middle makes a mistake, the order came in for 100 units, and by mistake, he made that 110. And he's processed that, it's moved ahead. Customer gets 110 units. He says, no, I ordered for 100, not 10. He returns 10. See, a simple mistake means so much of cost to the company. It'll go to the customer, it'll be shipped, shipping charges will go up. Then there's a return. There are costs involved in that. Then the payment, the invoice will be delayed, which means the payment will also be delayed. So all of these are incurred costs to the company. If, let's say, there was one single place, if the sales order comes in, it's in one place, the next department acts on the same sales order from the same system and then moves on, then the warehouse picks up the same sales order, he processes it, then that is shipped, then there is no chance of making a mistake, right? So all processes are tightly integrated. Next thing, free flow of information between departments. So it does not matter whether I'm making an order in New Delhi or fulfillment takes place from Bangalore. It doesn't really matter because all of that is on one system. And it is accurate. You can never make a mistake. It's not possible. And the data is real time. So because you don't have to collate data, you don't have to commit, put together any Excel sheet or do anything. It's all out there. Just one click and you get the information. Enhanced security. Okay. Why would security be so important? Let's say in today's world, I'm sure everyone listening knows about these things all too well. I send an invoice for 10,000 rupees. Now, without any encryption, that 10,000 rupees can be tampered with if someone is phishing, someone's snooping on the network. It's not possible to do on an ERP. Okay, let me retract that. It is virtually impossible. Virtually impossible with the level of encryption, with the kind of the layered approach. It is virtually impossible to break through and tamper with data. So that's one. Number two, auth levels. So various users in the company have different authorization levels. For instance, let's say today, the purchasing team doesn't need to know what the marketing team's targets are. But if everything's in Excel, then it's very simple. Someone can simply send over the data. Let's say everyone in the company doesn't need to know everyone's salaries. That only belongs to the HR team. So if it, again, stored in an Excel, it can be shared amongst the entire company. So people with proper authorization levels can only view the data that's authorized for them. Now, it's a single source of truth. Like I said, it's all tied together. So what happens in the olden days, again, when ERP was evolving, companies would implement one ERP for India, one ERP for Japan, another for US. So at least that reduced the amount of disparity, but on a global level, they would again have to reconcile all their data and consolidate that. Well, at least that's better than reconciling at a micro level. Today, I wouldn't say today, about 15, 16 years ago, Oracle and other companies, SAP, they all moved to a single source of truth. That means one company means one ERP. It doesn't matter whether you are running your businesses in US, Canada, Europe, UK, India, doesn't matter. It's all from one place. What made that change? That was quick and fast internet. Until 2003 or so, internet wasn't as fast. Broadband, high-speed broadband made that change. When high-speed broadband went over a certain threshold, that was at that time 256 KB, companies decided, hey, we can keep one instance in one place on Earth, and it won't matter because everyone will get acceptable speeds. So their transactions won't get locked. Okay. Now, how do organizations evolve? Essentially, after implementing ERP, what happens to them? How do they benefit from them? So today, I have today not really got any hard figures, anything in black and white, but all companies will say they have saved millions of dollars in terms of infrastructure, in terms of productivity. They've increased their productivity. How? Simple. Prior to ERP, a department needed, let's say, 10 people to manage the information, to process that information. Today, with the advent of ERP or implementing that, they could have cut it down from 10 to 5. And even with 10 people processing that information, there was a lot of reconciliation, a lot of checks, manual checks, send checks over, correct the information, resend, all of that has gone. With ERP, it's all one. All done in one shot. Increased accountability. Everyone is accountable in the organization. I can tell you, there was a funny example. We were implementing ERP for a major wagon manufacturer of India. And this ERP, it was Oracle. And, at the beginning of ERP, there's one term, let me introduce you to that. We call legacy. So companies in general have some kind of legacy systems prior to ERP. So it could be some disparate system with some database here, which they run, or it could be as bad as Excel sheets. Well, let me correct, Excel sheets aren't bad. I love Excel sheets, and Excel sheets are needed for a whole lot of things. But to run a company entirely on Excel sheet is not a good idea. So what happened when we have to come up with ERP, there is something called conversion. What is conversion? We convert data. So today, when we get ERP, we need to pick up all the company's existing data and push that data into ERP. So that data needs to be converted, hence called conversion. Why converted? Because the data, let's say all the customers will have, let's say, customer name, customer address, customer email, customer phone, but it might not have, and very likely will not have, all the information that the ERP package asks for. So there are certain adjustments that need to be made, so certain data massaging that needs to be done, and then some data format might not be valid. This is a very common thing. When we go for converting data, and let's say a company's got 10,000 customers, and we try to convert all of the 10,000 customers together, first, on the first run out of the 10,000, only 1,000 will go into ERP. 9,000 will fail. Mostly why? Because there is some junk data in the list. For instance, customer name has got some star, hash, some weird ASCII characters. This is a very common thing that happens. So that's conversion, in short. Now, when we've been doing that, we found certain discrepancies in inventory data. What kind of discrepancies? Because when we checked inventory in the warehouse and their old records, those weren't matching. So we found these discrepancies, and we found that, well, long story short, a lot of their scrap iron were written off in the legacy system on paper, with the justification that those were eaten by rats. Okay, imagine that. And no one had a clue about it, because the record room is probably of the size of 10,000 square foot area, and it's got records from the floor to the ceiling. Who would actually go through it? So it's just written off. Imagine the amount of loss to the company. The company is unaware of it. So accountability is on top priority here. There is no way someone can tamper records. Each and every record, each and every item is accounted for. And if something is transacted, it is always done with an audit trail. So there is almost no way someone can tamper with it, hence accountability. And eventually, administrative costs are reduced, because as you can imagine, we don't need to put in so much of effort and so many people to administer data. Okay. Any questions so far? We good? All right. So we go into the organizational growth patterns. Well, these are linked. Organizations, once they implement ERP, because they become leaner than they were before, their growth moves on a higher plane, and their bottom line is reduced because they are not expending so much. Loss is cut down to next to zero because everything is tracked. And hence, because they've become a leaner organization, they can focus more on what they do best, whatever their business is. Their sales improves. This is what we've seen. I've put down some testimonies on OSI Digital site. I will recommend that you go through. I'll really encourage you to go through it. I'll share the slide after this, so you can go through all of that information and see how it actually benefits. You can read testimonies from customers on the website and see how it has helped. Let's move on to the ERP adoption process. The ERP adoption is done by all major companies, as we say, and we call it as implementation. So we implement ERP for customers. Here is a very high level flow of how ERP is implemented at any customer of OSI, hence customer. I'll give you a moment to just look at the entire process and I'll explain to you. So let's jump in. When a company first decides to implement ERP, what do? They would identify a vendor. Now, what do we mean by a vendor? Vendor is typically a system integrator. A system integrator are companies like OSI Digital, who implement ERP for the customer or various other things for customers. Now, why does a company need a vendor or a system integrator? Because there is a need of some special skills, special knowledge, and experience. Now, let's say I spin up a company and I can decide to implement ERP for myself. Yes, of course I can do that. But if my employees lack those skills, then the implementation is very likely to be faulty. It might not have exactly what my business needs, and it'll be difficult running my system on the ERP system. Hence, almost all companies today go for a vendor. That's one. Number two, after ERP is implemented, then what does a company do with, let's say, 50 employees? ERP has been implemented. Then they have to be redeployed in other tasks. Now, the company might not have other tasks to give them. So it's always best, get a vendor, implement ERP, and then move on. So if the company starts by identifying a vendor or a system integrator, then once the system integrator comes up, goes in for a business process study. So the system integrator will sit down with various departments within the company, and they will study their system. They will, study their process, not the system. System is not in yet. They will study the process and will find out, okay, finance team, how do you make payments? Okay, do you follow this process for your payments? All right, fine. Why do you exactly go here? Why do you take an approval here? Okay, who gives the approvals? What are your limits for approvals? So they will study the entire business, and eventually they will come up with a set of documentation. So while they do that, point 2 and point 3, these are kind of in parallel. ERP package also needs to be identified. So let's say it's a manufacturing company. Let's say I go from OSI Digital to a new customer, and they're a manufacturing company. And I ask them, okay, fine, on a very high level, you are a manufacturing company. What kind of business do you exactly do? Is it process manufacturing, discrete manufacturing? What kind of process you follow? Okay, so your ERP is going to also take care of your manufacturing process. Fine, then you can go for this package. Some other company might be, okay, you need to run your finance processes on ERP. Then I would suggest you go with this package, this ERP. So that ERP package identification is important. Once that is done, then by then the business process study is done. They come up with certain set of documents. I'll show you in the next slide. Then they sit down to customize and configure ERP. Now this is very important. Very important, customize and configure ERP. Now, why would someone buy software, get someone to implement that, and that too, the software needs to be customized and configured? Why do I actually need to do that? Simple. Oracle, SAP, BAN, every other company, they will bring out a software. Imagine. Okay, let me give you one example here. I had implemented ERP for a major airline in the UAE, and I learned something really, really interesting. I like to share this with you. If you buy, let's say today, Jet Airways is restarting their business. Now, Jet Airways buys airplanes. They have a Boeing fleet, so they will go for Boeing. Today they'll go for Boeing 777s or maybe Boeing 787s. They've already got 737s down there. Now, have you ever wondered when you board Jet Airways? Okay, Jet Airways is still not flying today, but when you board Indigo, Indigo has their own livery on their airlines on their plane, they use A320s. Another airline, Go Air, they also use A320s. Their livery is different. Their seating arrangement could be somewhat similar, but their seating, upholstery, their internals, everything looks different. It's the same plane, but it's all different. Have you ever wondered what happens? Simple. When someone or a company buys a plane, you know what they get? They just get the hull, the wings, and the tires. They don't get anything more than that. But when they get the finished product, it looks exactly the way they want it. What happens? The moment they buy a plane, they get the basics, and then they have to say, okay, I want my livery to have this logo in this color, this way. I want so many seats. This is going to be my seat configuration. This is what my pantry is going to include, so on and so forth. This is what you'll have the designs on the walls. So it is a completely customized plane, but it is the same plane. It is an A320 or a Boeing 737. ERP is exactly like that. When you buy ERP, you will get exactly that. It is going to run, it is going to work, but it's not going to be your ERP. Why? For instance, you will need to send invoices from ERP. One of the document, a must document. Now, OSI Digital is going to implement for, let's say, Sketches. Sketches invoice that goes out from Oracle EBS is not going to be the same as, let's say, some other company's invoice. It's going to have a different logo, different layout, and everything. So it's a customization. This is a very simple. Now, how their accounting takes place is going to be slightly different from someone other's accounting. They will have their own flavor. So that flavor has to be built in to the ERP, hence the need for the vendor and the customization and configuration. Okay, so after this part is done, then the system integrator or the vendor will take the users that is on the customer side, go into a CRP, which is a conference room pilot. CRP means that they look at what the system is today, and they decide, okay, this is fine, this is not so well, so change this. After CRP is done, it goes on for a few days. The ERP is again finely tuned. Post that, they try and get a UAT. So everything is retested, and if the users are all happy, they say, okay, this is going fine, our processes are met, things are running, we like it, they give a sign-off. That's called a UAT sign-off. After the UAT sign-off, we come to a cutover. What's a cutover? Means you stop using the old system, you move to the new system. That's the cutover. That is done, and the ERP is go live. Means from that point onwards, we will not transact in the old system, we will transact in the new ERP shiny system. Okay. Sorry, I might have taken a little more time to explain some of the concepts. Okay, so ERP adoption process. So we talked about all of it. This is just the verbal information that I've just explained to you. The only thing that I didn't mention over there was the documentation. The documentation is exhaustive, but on a very high level, what we do is we run a gap analysis, means what or how they run their business and how they can run their business on ERP. There are certain gaps. Certain things need to be corrected in the new system. So we come up with as-is documents and so how the process is today, and to-be documents that what it's going to be. And from there on, we begin the journey of customization and configuration. Okay, I won't go through the next, we do the rest of it. I've already talked about it. So how do we transition business to ERP? To begin with it, to transition into ERP, first of all, the organizations need to believe in the investment that they are about to make. They have to believe. Well, it may sound a little strange, but this is a long journey for any organization. It is a huge transformation for an organization, and everyone has to think in terms of ERP, how things will work. Unless we believe in that, it is not going to be successful. So organizations need to sensitize their employees. Because why the employees? Because the employees are going to use it. It is for the employees to make sure the business processes run properly. So they need to conduct change management sessions within their organizations on a regular basis to sensitize their employees. And the system integrator has to also help take the users and show them that it is a change, a mindset change, a new way of doing their business. And organizations have to dedicate a yearly budget into keeping the system running and upgrading the system as time goes on. Now, one might say, if I don't keep that budget, yes, of course, you could do that, but it's not advisable because ERP, like anything else, it needs to be maintained. There could be issues, there could be changes that need to go into the system, and from time to time, systems also have to be upgraded. Okay, now I think this is what you've been waiting for. Business analytics and ERP. Well, let me show you what a ERP architecture looks like on a very high level. It's no different from any other application. I'm sure there are technical people on the forum today. So it's no different. It has a database. On top of the database, we have the application layer, and on top of that, we have a desktop layer. The desktop layer interacts with the users. Now, this application layer is the one which is really, really important. Let me show you another graphic. This is the graphic on the right is a little dated, but it shows everything. It's got the different servers. All of these run, which forms the heart of the ERP system. Business intelligence is a part of ERP. And that's where business analytics come in. And this is actually not the start. Business analytics starts prior to ERP implementation. Why and when? Remember I talked about conversion? At the conversion stage, business analysis starts because we need to find out how many employees or how many customers, what kind of customers, can these customers be taken, and so on and so forth. It is a humongous amount of data that needs to be waded through, massaged, done, and humongous amount of reports that have to be pulled out from the existing data before they can go to ERP. This is just a slide on what a BI dashboard looks like. Unfortunately, I couldn't present. I would have loved to give you a real BI dashboard, but well, client confidentiality is inhibiting me from that. But this is just to give you a feeling. Now, roles and the hiring of BA and ERP professionals. Very simple. ERP has needs in terms of data analysis of legacy and ERP, like I just mentioned. Point number 2, custom reports. Every ERP needs tons of custom reports, tons, because they need custom reports for all of their documents, right? It has to follow their own standards. So reports have to be customized or created new. BI dashboards, how they are going to manage, how is this, let's say, department head is going to keep an eye on the business. How many customers come in every day? Should we approach this customer or should we focus on customers from a different region? All of these, I mean, these are all custom dashboards that have to be built in. And then these dashboards are analyzed. Should we focus our sales on this target or those targets? All of these trends have to be analyzed. By the way, since we are talking about trends, I'm not sure if you've heard, Walmart, one simple example, Walmart had run the same trend analysis and amongst other things, and they came up with an analysis that it's best their sales go up when baby diapers and beer are sold side by side. So interesting, but that trend came up in their study, and it actually made them a lot successful. Now, coming on to roles in ERP. Out here, there are two major roles, and in both cases, business analysis or data analysis is extremely important. If you are working in ERP, data is your friend, analysis is your friend. So we start off with business analyst. Business analyst is a person who studies a customer's business and then performs the as is and to be analysis, configures the system. Technical integrator makes all the necessary changes like custom reports, custom BI dashboards, all of the custom. So he looks at the system technically. Business analyst looks at the system from a business point of view. And in both cases, data analysis is of utmost importance. With that, so by the way, we are hiring for these positions if you're interested. And with that, we come to your questions and answers. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer those.
First of all, Mr. Ray, I think, it would not be justice for me to say that you've just done justice, but you've overdone it. I must say that this has been one very, very insightful session, because I was receiving a lot of queries with respect to the ERP. Why certain subjects, why not others, why programming, why technical, etc. I'll very quickly jump onto a few questions that we already have. So there's one aspirant amongst a few other viewers this evening who wants to get into a government job that asks for business analytics. His question is, do you think that ERP, being such a transparent system, is currently being adopted by the government? And the extended question to this is, are we as business analysts expected to think of or implement ERP systems?
Okay, so the first part of the question, ERP in government, yes. I myself have implemented ERP for government agencies way back in 2006. And that also brings me to a topic. We've recently received an award from the Telangana government for implementing ERP in one of their divisions. So yes, ERP is very much in use in all governments. And the second part of the question was?
As a business analyst, are they also expected to introduce or implement ERP?
Oh, very much so. We just touched on the previous slide. A business analyst has the primary role of introducing ERP because he studies the existing system, he maps it to the new system. So a business analyst is key. We can't implement ERP without a BA. It's not possible.
Okay, so let me move on to the next question that we have over here. It says that since this industry has become so much mechanical, where everything is being done by tools and techniques, would we say that business analysts or translators have a limited role? As it is, we are depending too much on the software to tell us where we are going ahead.
Classic question. I love this. Classic question. Let me start with one anecdote. I have to say this. As I have mentioned, I was implementing and supporting ERP for a major airline in the UAE. One of the business users, now it is quite normal. The system is bound to have problems now and then, which is quite normal. And on top of that, it is an evolving system and we are continuously making changes on the system. So once ERP is implemented, doesn't mean that it ends over there. It actually begins from there. As business moves forward, for instance, today we might be implementing ERP for India. Tomorrow, ERP needs to be extended. Business grows into, say, Bangladesh. they have to include the Bangladeshi business unit into ERP. That means, again, more work. It's called a rollout, country rollout. So country rollouts take place, new requests come in, new reports have to be developed, new system changes have to be done. This happens all the time, hence the need for maintenance. Now, going back to the point, this user, at some point, because something wasn't working, he got a little frustrated and came over to me and he said, look, I think we were better off before we had ERP. And I didn't actually have an answer to give him directly. So I thought for a second and I said, look, if that's the case, I think we were better off when we just relied on writing everything down in simple notebooks. Now, why even think of a computer? I think computers have messed up our lives. Yes. So it all depends. Like I said, if I go back to the previous point, believe in the system. Now, where is the lack of faith? Today, anything, not today, even earlier on, since the advent of the universe, any system is bound to have some points of failure. Any system will bound to have some issue here and there. We cannot deny that. The problem is what a lot of people think is that, okay, I've paid for it, means this is it, and it has to work the way I want to. Yes, it will, but everything has limitations, right? So a small fault here, another fault there, we tend to think, oh, this is a problem. But reward versus risk is higher. The reward is definitely higher, and hence, this is why we are still in business. The world is running on it. Now, if everything is digitized, I think the concern is coming from the point if everything is digitized, okay? Here is the thing. I don't know, you must have all watched Terminator, right? So people tend to think, okay, everything will go and be controlled by the machines. The humans will have nothing to do, right? Be controlled. Even today, well, I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I can say this. What's the point? What's the point in doing the same thing over and over again? Why waste a human mind to continuously do the same thing day in, day out, morning till night? If that's the case, you might as well have a machine do it and utilize a human to do something more productive. Think up new things to do that the machine cannot. It's very simple. I'm sure everyone living in India, you have a maid, you possibly have a driver at home. So why do you keep a maid? Can you not do the same tasks? Why do you have a driver? Can you not drive? It's because you want to save time there and focus on more important things. You don't want to focus your time on mundane things. Hence the need. So computers are exactly the same thing. Digitization is exactly the same thing. Nothing more.
Well, thank you so much, Abhijit, for answering this question. Let me just take one last question that we have.
Certainly.
So it says that here, so when you talked about evolution of ERP, we do understand that technologies change, businesses change, objectives change, and so are the goals that are changing. Can I say that after reading a course for about 2 years or 1 year degree as what JGPS is offering, my relevance of education remains the same, or is it something that I have to keep on adding and keep getting trained on year with respect to ERP?
Okay. I think there are a few angles to that question. So I'll try and cover as many angles as I can. Number one, in the world, there is nothing called constant. Nothing remains constant. Everything changes, yes, and we have to keep learning. Why? Number one, because today, let's say Oracle if I take Oracle, Oracle today is running version 12.2.10. That's 12.2.10. You will find a lot of companies still running an older version of Oracle, which was the previous extremely popular version of Oracle, which is 12.1.3. They decided not to upgrade or wait. What has happened? At the end of the bargain, they thought, okay, we will not spend money and upgrade to a new system because a new system is somewhat radically different. We will have to invest in more people, get new system integrators and so on and so forth, new contract and all of it. So they thought they actually saved money. Very well. They continued the old system. It's been a few years. Today, they actually have to spend more money keeping the old system running. How? I had shown the technical diagram, the architecture of ERP. It's got a database at the bottom. Now, I might decide I'm not going to upgrade the application, which is the application layer. So I'm not going to upgrade the application. Fine, I will continue that with it. But the database has become obsolete. Oracle does not support that version. So they possibly had a version 12 running. Today, Oracle runs 19C. And they are still on 12C. Oracle has said, we are not going to support 12C anymore, which is quite natural. So what this company or these companies are doing is they are paying extra to Oracle to support the older version. So they are in extended support, special extended support, which is costing them more than what they were doing. Next, when they have no other way out, they have to upgrade, paying more. So why am I saying this? Because it is always beneficial to keep upgrading oneself. And yes, it might seem to be a hurdle, but I can assure you, it is not that much of a hurdle. And if you think that's a hurdle, let me also add, my dad used to be a lawyer. He used to be a lawyer. And okay, law, right? How much change? How many bills are passed every year? One would imagine. But I know how much he had to read on a regular basis to keep himself updated with the latest. So, and I'm talking about the previous generation. So this is the field of tech. There is no way out, right? We have to grow. This is the way out. And folks, let me tell you, it's enjoyable. It's not a burden.
Absolutely, and I can't think I can agree more on that because it's not just about business analytics or law or management, but every field demands us to be updated all the time. There were ethics, there were talks about business governance, and we can see so much happening with Bharat Pay and many other companies today. All of these incidents and all of these situations to give us a new, fresh thought, viewpoints to look at. I think as a business analyst, as a management student, we must always have that knack of representing a standout point, which essentially is out of the box thinking, as what we call it in the modern era.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And sorry, I'll just interject over here. Just one point. So the gentleman, I'm assuming it's a gentleman who had asked this question. This is a very relevant question today. And if we are asking this question from this angle, do we have to take this burden of updating ourselves? Then let me ask you, and everyone, it's not just who's asked the question. If we think this is a burden, then how do we expect to get new versions of iPhone every year?
Absolutely.
Right? If we can expect that, then of course we also have to keep up.
That's right. And be it technology, be it even the books would come with new editions every year. I remember.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So every year, whenever we are stepping into the classroom, we have to look into what's new, what's the global perspective. And that's what precisely differentiates a business school, the top leading ones in the country, with the rest, because it's the curriculum that matters, it's the academic delivery that matters, and who is delivering matters at the end of the day, above many other things.
True.
So, Mr. Abhijit Ray, I'm going to take this proud moment of putting a vote of thanks over here. It has been a real delight for each one of us who has viewed and would be viewing this video recording in future as well. Believe me, this session was something which has been an eye-opener for somebody who comes from a non-technical background. It not just assures us why ERP is important, but with the statements, with the insights that you have shared in your own capacity, I think you have clearly removed the blocks that we had in our mental gray matter somewhere. Whether is it too technical to learn, or is it something which is easy to be adopted? I, Meenakshi Toman, on behalf of Jindal Global Business School and OP Jindal Global University, thank you wholeheartedly for accepting and delivering such an insightful session. Today, the participants of the session will go with a food for thought as to why ERP is something that needs to be studied in a curriculum that is being offered under business analytics. This one-year full-time MBA course in business analytics being offered by Jindal Global Business School is not only pioneer in its own way, but also assures that we are meeting what the industry has demanded us of too. We not only ensure job skill sets, but we also would want a holistic development of the participants in this cohort. Thank you very much for joining us, sir. We wish you all the best and have a great evening ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Toma. And just final word, folks, if you'd like to see an ERP in action, I would say go to an Airtel store or a Vodafone store and talk to the customer representative there. What you see on their screen is the Oracle ERP in action.
That's amazing. And heartiest congratulations for the recent award that you mentioned.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure being here and an honor.
Thank you so much, sir. We look forward to having more such sessions with you in future as well.
I'll be happy to.
Thank you, participants. We are now at the close of the session.
See you and have a great evening and a great weekend too. Bye-bye.